Welcome to lesson 1 of our online class, Preparing Dog for New Baby. I'm really happy you're here. This is such an exciting time. I'm really excited that I get to be part of it with you. So we're going to just dive right in. I want to start by saying that it doesn't really matter how your new baby is joining your family. The preparation is pretty much the same if you are being proactive and you are getting your dog ready before baby comes home. So if you are pregnant or adopting, there is usually a pretty significant lead time before baby shows up. There are some strange circumstances with adoption that the timing can be very quick or it can be very long. I have had children both ways, and so I'm pretty familiar with the journey either way. Pregnancy, of course, is a very predictable length of time. You don't always know you're pregnant right away. But as soon as you do, you can start working with your dog, and I would encourage you to do so. But I also don't want you to feel bad if you haven't started until later in your pregnancy, because anything that you do ahead of time is better than nothing. Same with adoption. So your dog is going to have a lot of changes coming up and is going to need quite a lot of support. And I'm going to hopefully help you guys navigate through that system. All right. So there is some concern for families that are adopting a baby that the dog will suddenly feel sabotaged, that out of the blue, this new creature shows up to live at the home with the rest of the family. But things are changing, and I don't want you to think that this dog will really be that surprised. In reality, there are going to be some significant changes in the household before the baby shows up. So you're going to be bringing in probably new supplies. You'll be getting a lot of deliveries. New furniture may be coming into the home. You'll be bringing in new objects like a car seat and that kind of stuff. And you're going to have more stress hormones. So even though you're really excited, that is still a form of stress. And you will have some hormones that are going to be obvious to your dog. Even if you think you're cool as a cucumber, I have a feeling that your dog is going to know something is up. Of course, if you're pregnant, your body is going to be changing shape. You're going to be having a lot of different hormones and pheromones, and obviously new objects in the home, the same as with any family bringing in a new baby. So the good news is, though, is that preparation is the same regardless of how the baby is joining your family. I want to start with supervision, and we're going to get to this when we talk about our management and routine. But in terms of mindset, I really want you guys to start to wrap your head around some of the factors that relate to bringing a baby home. And I just want to give you a little more support here than what I feel that most people get under normal circumstances. So the advice that people get all the time is that supervise your dog and your baby, never leave them unattended together, but supervise. But then nobody ever really talks about what supervising really means. We are going to spend a lot of time on this. I love this image because that is what supervision means. And the trick is you can't do that all the time and still make dinner. And you can't do that and still feed your baby and still feed your dog and take a shower and sleep. So we're going to talk about supervision in a variety of different levels in terms of how extreme your supervision needs to be at all times. What about if you're just in the room? It's not going to be good enough, but we will talk a lot about this. And I will share some examples later on about what adequate supervision for certain circumstances is. And we will also have some assignments where you plan for it in advance. All right. Big question. I figure I'm going to get it out of the way right away because all of you are probably wondering about this. So when I go online and I dig around a little bit to try to search for supporting materials for how to prepare your dog for new baby, everybody talks about bring home the blanket. And that's what you get, So let's talk about it. Should you bring home the blanket, right? So first of all, let's assume that that's even possible. So for adopting families, this may not be possible. For families that are having a baby in a hospital, occasionally what happens is a spouse or partner or family member leaves the hospital, goes home, takes care of the dogs, and they can bring home an item that smells like the baby for the dogs to become familiar with before the baby actually comes home. And if you are adopting, so when I adopted my son, we visited him in Guatemala when he was 8 weeks old. And so I could bring something home if I chose to. And then we went and picked him up when he was a little bit older, closer to 5 months. So there was a time when I could have brought home an item. And in fact, my whole suitcase smelled like him. We'll talk more about this later because I held him. He was on me, right? So my biggest concern is if you hand your dog a blanket, oh, look at the blanket, smell the blanket. The baby blanket smells like baby. And you get your dog magnetized to that blanket and your dog is like, wow, fun, and grabs the blanket and plays with the blanket. Do you want the dog to be grabbing the blanket when your baby's in it later? No, you don't. You don't want the little tail end of the blanket to be hanging down and then, have the dog say, oh, this is what I got to play with last time. This would be the last thing that I want you guys to do. I really want you to try to build safety, not to create something that's so exciting that can cause a problem later. If you want your dog to have the opportunity to smell your baby before the baby comes home, go for it. That's totally fine. But what I would recommend that you do is that you have the blanket up on a shelf in a common area of the house so that the blanket is not the big deal, but the odor that comes from the blanket can permeate the house. That's how it's going to be when your baby comes home. The baby will fill, the smell of the baby for your dog will fill the house, regardless of whether you shove the baby, the dog in the baby's face or whatever, which you are not going to do by the end of this class. I just really wanted you to think about this, that if you get too excited and make too much of a big deal about it, you may get the dog too excited, and that may not be necessary. All right, I do want to give you an analogy because I have to. My son now is a teenager, and I just want you to think about this. This is kind of a humorous analogy, but if he is going to have some friends come over and I haven't met them before, I don't ask him to collect a bunch of their socks and bring them home before he comes to visit. Smelling his friends' socks before they visit the house does have no guarantee on the fact that I'm going to have positive feelings for those kids. And in fact, if I find the smell offensive, which teenage boy socks, come on, it's going to be offensive, it may make me not like his friends even more. So I don't want you to think that bringing home a blanket is any magic cure for making your dog like your new baby. There's no guarantee of how they're going to feel about that smell. It will be familiar, but it won't necessarily do anything to change things. So in my case, this was, I look like a baby here. This was when I was visiting my son in Guatemala when he was about 7 weeks old. And the items in my suitcase smelled like him when I got home. And the dog smelled the suitcase, and that was fine. I had the baby on my body. I had some stuff that I brought home and washed. And the dog got to smell those things. But of course, he didn't come home for 3 more months. And it's possible that his scent by then could have changed. So my dog may not have known what the difference was, or, what she was sniffing, or he was sniffing at the time. I had a boy dog then. Okay. We will be talking at greater length about homecoming. And homecoming is such an exciting thing. We're going to actually go over some videos that I found online. We will talk about what that looks like. But I want you to just start thinking ahead about what that is going to look like and when your dog is going to meet your baby for the first time. I encourage you guys to take your time, take things really slow. You don't have to make a big deal out of it. The baby and dog have a lifetime to get to know each other. I do encourage mom and dad, but mom especially, she's going to be sore, likely if she had the baby from her own body, she'll be sore. The dog is going to be really excited to see you after you haven't been seen for a while. And so if you're sore in particular, you need to take extra care that the dog doesn't knock into you or hurt you. If you've had a C-section, you're very tender and you need to be careful. If you make a big deal about this introduction, you're going to create big feelings in the dog. And I'd rather the dog just see the baby as just something else that's in the house, as opposed to this thing I have to fill with attention. Okay, we're going to talk a lot more about this later, but I do want you, as we progress through this class, to start thinking about what that could look like and how what you think it might look like right now will likely be modified over the course of this class. Okay, mistakes all families make. This happens all the time. One of those relates to homecoming. We think it's going to be this great thing. We're going to film it, put it on YouTube and show all our friends. And isn't this the cutest thing that my dog loves my baby? I want you to really take off your rose-colored glasses, and I want you to realize that dogs have teeth. They will use their teeth if they are pushed. I do not want them to use their teeth on your new baby, because I've heard a lot of really terrible stories, both from my own clients and from other people online, because I work in a big support group online, and I give a lot of advice to people from all over the world. And there's some really tragic stories out there. And since you're taking this class, you're already showing me that you don't want to be one of those. Now, this photograph was something that I found online. Makes me so nervous. This baby is absolutely innocent, precious, helpless. And this dog has some body language that makes me uncomfortable. The jaw is clenched shut, the ears are back. I see some of the whites around the eyes, which makes me think this dog is not very relaxed. The dog could be guarding the baby, which is not an attractive quality in a dog. It is not the dog's responsibility to take care of this baby. It's yours. You're the parent. And so I want you to really think about what could happen. And I want you to realize that if you're on the other end of a camera, you are not going to be able to be fast enough to intervene if something were to happen. So these are some mistakes that I really need you guys not to be doing. If you want somebody to take pictures, somebody else can take pictures while you're in between the dog and the baby. I need you to make sure that we keep this precious bundle safe. All right. It all comes down to relationship management and training. And we're going to talk a lot about these things, both in this lesson and throughout the course. This photograph is cute, but it could be a problem, right? Puppies and babies are both incapable of making sound appropriate decisions. They are developmentally not there yet. And so you need to be in there making sure that everybody stays safe. Relationship is going to be the basis of the bond that you have with your dog moving forward, how your dog responds to you when you request certain behaviors. All of these things are going to be based on your relationship. And I also really want your dog to have a positive relationship with your baby as it grows. So we're going to start by talking about the golden rule, which is do unto others as you would have them do unto you, or something like that. The gist is be nice and treat others how you want to be treated. And I want you to consider the dog in that as well as other humans, right? So we need your dog to feel safe. We need your dog to know that nap time is sacred. We're not going to bother you when you're napping. We're not going to bother you when you're eating. We're not going to bother you when you have a toy, unless we're playing with you with that toy, right? The dog has some safe places in the house where it can retreat. You need to sometimes separate the child from the dog to protect the dog. You know, a lot of times babies and toddlers really want to play with the dog, and the dog's not so interested, especially if you have a senior dog who has aches and pains and is crotchety and cranky. We need to make sure that that dog does not develop negative feelings towards your child. On the other hand, we also need to make sure that if your dog behaves poorly, that we protect your child. And otherwise we can end up with kids that are afraid of dogs. So we need to work on things that help your dog feel safe. We want the family and the sort of lifestyle at home to be somewhat predictable, with routines where the dog knows, okay, at mealtime, I know that I will be eating over here. The toddler is over here. I'm going to be safe. And I need you to think about the fact that dogs and kids communicate very differently from one another, and that is going to impact their relationship moving forward. We're going to talk more about that as well. Okay, dog body language is crucial in keeping our relationship with our dogs sound. So if you can understand how a dog is feeling, then you will be able to intervene on your dog's behalf, right? So if your toddler is doing something, or your baby, when they're really little, they have these involuntary graspy motor skills where they act, you know, if even a newborn baby, if you put your finger out, they grab it. They're not doing it on purpose, but they can do the same thing to a fistful of your dog's fur, which your dog will not appreciate. But you need to get to know your dog well enough to understand how your dog is going to feel about those kinds of things. And I don't want you to think that it's about getting your dog to be tolerant of that, because I don't really think that it's fair to make your dog put up with certain things that are uncomfortable. But instead, what I want you to think about is, okay, if my dog is uncomfortable around a screaming baby, then I need to make my dog feel safer. So it's about feelings and how we can help our dog be its best self under the new circumstances that are going to be present in your family. All right, management. I have this photo, this picture, because you will probably never pee again alone for a really long time. You're going to be multitasking from now on, like forever. Your hands will always be full. You're going to either be carrying a child, or you're going to be carrying laundry or groceries, or trying to have the dog be in one place and the baby's in another place, and you're trying to keep everybody safe. We're going to devote an entire class to this topic, but safety has to be a priority. So that means that you need to know where the dog and or baby is at all times. So thinking ahead to going to the bathroom, somebody's coming with you. And they might already. I mean, if you have pets, there's a very good chance that your dog comes to the bathroom with you anyway. All right. Training is another super crucial pillar. I sort of like to look at this as like a triangle. Does that look like a triangle? I don't know. Relationship management training, all of these three pieces really relate together to hold everything together, your relationship and your bond as a family and the trust that you have in one another. Now, training can be the basis of some of that behavior. Because it does a variety of things. So first of all, it strengthens your bond with your dog. It gives your dog a lot of confidence, but it also makes your dog able to come with you places. It makes your dog a housemate. It makes your dog compliant. If you ask for your dog to do a certain thing, your dog is going to be more willing to do it if they have a history of being paid for that behavior. Okay. So we will be talking more about training. We have a whole lesson devoted to training, and I'm going to teach you which behaviors your dog should know before your baby comes home. All right. Since this is our mindset unit, I want you to have a little bit of a mindset adjustment towards your dog. Again, I really want you to start putting yourself in your dog's position. How does my dog feel, right? And you're going to be reading body language. You're going to be looking at the training scenario. You're going to be looking at management. And when problem behaviors happen, because I'm not going to say if, I'm going to say when, because your dog will steal your baby's toys. Your dog will steal food that you left out. These things are going to happen because you're less attentive than usual. So instead of just getting mad or getting angry or having a knee-jerk reaction where you're just, what happened? What did you do? Stop. I want you to really put your thinking cap on and calm down and take a breath and say, okay, why did this happen? Okay. Did this happen because I wasn't paying attention? Did this happen because I forgot to close the baby gate? Did this happen because my dog hasn't had enough exercise? Okay. Think about that. You need to take some responsibility for what happened. What could you ask the dog to do instead? Okay. So if you catch the dog with his paws on the counter looking for leftover food, what could you ask the dog to do instead? Well, if you ask the dog to sit, then they can't have their feet on the counter. If you ask your dog to do some tricks, their paws can't be on the counter. If you toss some food the other direction, the dog goes and puts its nose on the floor instead of on the counter. Although I don't know that I would do that one because I don't want to redirect the dog with a food reward for having stolen food. So anyway, the idea is we want to create an incompatible behavior with what the dog is doing. So how can we help the dog to make a better choice? And then the last thing that you really have to think about, again, keeping some of the responsibility on you, is how could you have prevented it in the first place? Right? I should have taken the dog for a walk, right? I should have closed the baby gate. I should have put a leash on the dog when my baby was learning to crawl, so my dog didn't step on the baby and make him cry, right? So all of these kinds of things, we like to think ahead. All right. I'm going to give you an assignment, and this assignment is, we call it a mindset assessment. And what you're going to be doing is you are going to be thinking about how your dog feels about your child. Okay, how your dog feels about the baby, how your dog is in the house. You know, does your dog like to be touched? Does your dog like to be hugged? Most dogs don't, by the way. How does your dog growl when somebody comes near a bone? Okay, the one that's shown in this picture, you probably can't see it very clearly, is not the one that's for you guys. This is one that was from my toddler class. I have one that's specific for babies that you will find in the lesson in the files section of this. I think it's called the materials section of this lesson. So you're going to head over there after you're done watching the video. You're going to head over to the materials section and you are going to get your assignment, this worksheet, which I would love for everyone who interacts with your dog and who will interact with your baby to complete. I would like to see if you guys are all on the same page when it comes to parenting your dog. So that's another part of sort of this mindset lesson, is I want to make sure you're all in agreement. Oh yeah, we both agree that my dog could use some support in terms of stealing food off the counter. We both think that the dog is too protective of his bed, right? These are things that are going to be big issues when the baby comes. So I want you to work through those things. I'm going to wrap it up here. I've given you a lot to think about, from when your baby comes home from the hospital for the first time, to your dog's current behavior, to the fact that there are going to be a list of training things that will help you have a happy and safe family once the baby comes home. And I'm going to wrap it up here. I want to remind you that I do offer video coaching. If you need extra support, I would be happy to help you. And I have a pretty active Facebook and Instagram account and a lot of very helpful blog articles on my website, which is poochparenting.net. I look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.